Hey guys, Tim with Little Crow Gunworks. Welcome back to the channel. Well, today is the day. We're finally going to get to the final steel shoot, the final performance for our load that we developed during the series. I apologize for how long it's taken me to get to this. You guys know we've been busy doing a whole bunch of other stuff and trying to pack a lot of that stuff in, and I'm finally getting around to recording the desk and review portion of this video. So I think what we're going to do, this video is probably going to be pretty long. I think what we're going to do is just review the testing conditions of that day. By the time I finally shot it, I think it was like January 2nd of this year, 2025. It was shitty out, really shitty, but I was going to run out of nice days, so I had to get it done because it was only going to get colder going into January. So made the best of it, but overall it went really well, as you're going to see. So we'll review the conditions, go out and show you the shooting footage at the farm, take you out to the farm, show you all that. We'll come back and review the groups like we usually do and analyze that and see how this load performed overall. And then on the next video, I think we'll do a conclusion, basically just put a bow on it and, you know, basically review anything that I don't cover in this video and kind of try to tie everything together nicely. And then in that video, I'm also going to share with you the story of this 308, where it went and who has it now and what they've been able to do with it using the same reloading process that I taught you guys in this series. So I guess without further ado, we'll get started here. I think I'll fire up the screen recording right away. 3, 2, 1, and we're live. All right. So, our testing conditions for the day, like I said, lousy. There's a picture of the flag that I use. It's on a 16-foot carbon fiber pole. It's like an airline windsock that I use. Works very good. That the day that I went out, well, I actually tried to go out earlier in this week, but it was rainy and foggy and you couldn't see any of the targets, so I had to postpone it until we got some better air quality and I could see, but that also meant the temperature was going to drop. So by the time I went out on January 2nd, it was cold and windy and the ground was frozen and it was snowing, just lousy conditions. But like I said, I had to get it done, so is what it is. Temperature was 16 degrees that day on average. Wind was 8 to 13 miles per hour, 11 mile per hour average from 5 to 9 o'clock, depending on which direction I was shooting. The prevailing was pretty much from 8 o'clock for most of the targets, and the average was about 11 miles an hour. Wind chill was only 3 degrees, so it was cold and miserable and whatever, not ideal conditions, but we made it work. Pressure was 29.23 inches of mercury, 72% humidity. So what you're going to see, we'll take you out to the farm here, but what you're going to see on the first two targets, you know, I had a good idea of what the prevailing wind was, as you'll see as I start shooting farther targets, but the first two targets that were close, 350 and 505, the way the wind was coming, those targets were kind of protected, so I wasn't getting 11 miles an hour on those targets. I was getting more like 3 miles an hour to 4 miles an hour on the 350 yard target, and the 505 was more like 7, and I didn't really get the full value until I was shooting farther. So you'll see on the first two, I airmail the first shot upwind off the side, and then I'm kind of learning as I go, realizing that, okay, these are, you know, pretty protected, but then once we get out further and the targets are more out in the open, you'll see the full value, and my wind call was dead on. So all right, without further ado, we'll take you out to the farm and show you how she shot. All right, all set up. Start at 350 yards. See how we do. A little bit upwind, just surprising, but this target is pretty well protected. It's not that far out in the open, so let's take our wind off and see how we do here. Elevation was perfect. There we go. Wow. That was really, really consistent. All right. 505. Try to put one near the center and then see what we get there. Sure why that one dropped down. It might have been what we've been talking about in the series with the brass quality. You know, this is why I harp on that, like start with good brass. That's the kind of thing it can do, where it's behaving predictably elevation wise and then it just spits one out the bottom or out the top for no reason. And I guess this is going to go back with the first two. Yep. So you see that? This is a very valuable teaching moment. So the first shot, I was upwind. I had too much wind on, and I pushed it upwind off the left. Then I took a minute and a half off and got on the plate. Elevation was perfect, but I was still a little bit upwind. And I thought, okay, well, I'm not too worried about it. I'll leave it. Second one stacked right on top of the first one. So I should say second and third shot stacked right on top of each other. And then the fourth shot, you see, dropped out the bottom. Well, I didn't do anything any different. That's everything about this ammo is perfectly consistent. So when it drops out the bottom like that, that's a flaw in something, whether it be a bad bullet or bad brass. And you know, the F-class guys and competition guys, they will go to great lengths and spend untold sums of money trying to get rid of shots that do that. And they'll add God knows how many processes to their ammo production just to try to minimize or get rid of that. So, and we'll go into that later. But that's the kind of stuff that shows up when you don't use top shelf brass. All right, I think we got to get turned here, change our direction and go out to 640. Our wind is turning out to be a bit more of a tailwind now, so almost coming from 5 o'clock now. There's fish tailing all over the place. I'm gonna go with no wind, see what we get out there. I think it's got enough of a crosswind to counteract our spin drift, so we'll see where we land out there. Try to put maybe 5 on the big plate, get her squared away, and then see if we can put 5 on that little 10-inch square. We'll see how we do. A little high. Back down in the middle. The wind call was perfect. Ooh, high and upwind. And halfway in between. All right. I don't know if this wind's going to let us get on that 10-inch square, but we'll give it a try. Nothing there. back to the big plate. See what our wind's doing. Okay, we're upwind now. Nothing. I think this wind is going to let us get on that little one, guys. Not with this low performance setup here. So holding really decent vertical overall. I didn't change that at all. So every shot out there was the same elevation, and that's still pretty decent vertical, all things considered. All right, now we're out at 750 yards, kind of approaching the usable limit for this cartridge setup, cartridge and bullet combo in this weather. It's I think we're going transonic at this target, or thereabouts. All right, we'll see how we do. Just about dead center. That's a good start. A little bit downwind, but I'm going to leave it. Looked like it might have been off the edge. Wind's picking up. Right in there with the other. So one of them, I don't remember which one now, went off the right because I started a little bit downwind and then the wind was building as I was shooting. So I think I got the first two on there, and then the wind picked up and pushed the third one off the right, and then I started compensating more into the wind and was able to keep them on there. But gets to be pretty tough sledding out here with this kind of this low of performance, but still doable. You know, that doesn't mean you guys can't shoot this far if you just because you have a 308 with a 175 Match King. You can do it. I mean, you got to know what you're doing, but you can do it. All right, now there's another target out there about the same distance at 764. It's a KYL rack. I think I'll put a few shots on that. And it's a 16-inch circle, a 12, an 8, and a 4. And the reason I put it at 764 is that's exactly 2 minutes of angle, 1.5, 1 minute of angle, and a half minute of angle. So that's going to be really tough for this cartridge setup. But I'm going to take 5 shots at it and see how many of them I can hit. I have a pretty good idea. What the wind's doing now, or I did. It's constantly changing, so we'll see. But that 16 should be big enough that I should be able to find it in 1 or 2 shots. Wind has kind of changed directions a little bit. Speed's about the same, but we'll give it a whirl, see how we do. it'll be fun anyway. Whether I hit them all or not. I can think of worse things to be doing. There we go. All right, let's see how this goes. Brr. Not very nice out here, boys. No, that doesn't translate through the camera very well, but the wind chill's about 3 or 4 degrees, so not very nice out. But we'll see how we do. All right, 764 on the KYL. Dead frickin' center. We call that a pinwheel, boys and girls. Wow. Better get while the getting's good. I completely missed the second one. I don't know where that went. Looks like the wind picked up a little more. Go back to the big one. No, we'll stick with the second one. Oh, wow. All right, now we'll go out and try the next one. It's a little bit bigger target. It's at exactly half a mile, which is outside of the use case for this combination. But we'll see how we do. We'll give it a try. All right, this one's going to be a little tougher because we don't have any kind of backstop. So if I'm not on there right away, I'm going to be kind of guessing around, trying to make contact. All right, well, if we weren't already, we're definitely on the lobbing mortars portion of this adventure. All right, see how we do. Wow. All right, I'm just gonna keep going. Write down velocities later. See if I can stay on top of this wind. Went right where I was aiming. And the last one will hold center. Wow. Really consistent, guys. That's if that's not half MOA vertical, it's close. Really good, considering what we're shooting. All right, since that was workable, we went, that was the mortar portion of of the day. Now we'll go to the Hail Mary portion of the day. Got a plate out at 1,000 yards that we shot at the beginning of this series with the load that we just haphazardly slapped together, but that was in October on a nice sunny day, and the wind was a lot better than it is today. But we'll see what we can do if I can get reticle high enough for that plate. I gotta dial up. Ay, ay, ay. Let's see. 25. Try that. Hail Marys. Here we go. I think I'll just single feed them. That dialed on. That dialed on. Cameras are on. Wind's about the same. I'm not expecting a third pinwheel in a row, but we'll see how it goes here. Heck of a time getting the height I need here. Let's scoot this back some. I think I might be able to make that work. Yeah, we'll try that. All right, boys. Wish me luck. Here we go. Almost a pinwheel. You can't make this stuff up. All right, let's motor. I think that hit the exact same place. I believe that. A little bit right, but the elevation's still good. We'll compensate a little bit left. That was about a minute. Come over a little bit. Looks like just below the bullseye. Okay, the wind's coming back a little bit. I should say dying off a little bit. That hit almost right where I was aiming. Looked like that hit right on top of the last one. I'm not 100% sure. Oh, that one hit way high on the plate. You guys see that? I didn't do anything any different. It was a tiny bit faster than the rest of them, but that's the brass, not the load, not the process, not me. That is the brass. That one was upwind. I'm 100% sure where that one went. Got 2 left. Just hold center and see what we get for this one. Ooh, way off the right. Wind, wind, wind. See, that last one, that had very similar velocity to the one that went super high, but you see they're not, it's right in there with the rest of them. So it's not the velocity, it's a piece of brass. That one was a minute downwind, so I'll add a minute. Send this last one out there. Right in there with the rest of them. So I'm not 100% sure if I hit the plate with all 10. I think I did. It's a little hard to see. You know, our air quality is not great. It's starting to snow again, and it's 1,000 yards away. But I think I have 9 on there for sure, maybe 10. But we'll see when I get down there. We'll count them up and take some measurements and whatever. But all in all, really good day. You guys can see that this is what you can do with even a very mediocre performance cartridge if you have a sound reloading process and you're diligent about the things that we tested and showed you in the series. I purposely used cheap brass so you guys could see this, and you know, where everything's super consistent elevation wise, and then it'll just throw one out the top or out the bottom randomly. And if I found that if you use good brass, you can minimize that quite a bit. Now, in an effort to try to take that away completely and reduce the vertical of the shots that did stay together, competition shooters, some of them will go to great lengths to try to make everything shoot even flatter than what we did. But the point of this series was to show you guys that you don't have to do all that to still get really good results. Now, the difference, you know, we're shooting 1,000 yards with a 308 and a crappy bullet. And, you know, if you think about the F-class guys, their X-ring is 5 inches. So it's half minute. So maybe a little over 5. So what they're trying to do is keep all of their shots within 5 inches of vertical at 1,000 yards with a way higher performance cartridge than this is. And our vertical out there, other than the one that blew out the top, we're probably in that 5 to 6 inch neighborhood. Well, in case we got done shooting, it was a hell of a day, but in case we have any naysayers accusing me of shooting during a calm day, here's our windsock, my carbon fiber pole. You can see the pole's bent and the flag is straight out. So, pretty lousy conditions to be shooting pinwheels at 750, 764, 880, and 1,000, especially with a 308. So, difficult conditions. We made it work anyway. Hell of a day. So, this thing shot unbelievable, all things considered, especially given the conditions. Vastly exceeded my expectations for the weather we had that day. I did not think I would be able to shoot that well and keep it on there at the 880 and 1,000 for sure. I thought we'd kind of top out at 750 given the conditions, and we just have to surrender to that. But I was able to stay on the ball, stay on the wind, figure out what that was doing, and make good shots. And I had enough visibility to, for the most part, see what I was doing on 1,000 yards. There were some impacts that I couldn't tell where they were, so I was kind of shooting blind on the subsequent shots where, if I said I wasn't able to see where that went, the next shot is blind, and I'm just hoping I can see that one. So had I been able to see every shot, I probably would have been able to keep them a little tighter on 1,000. 880, I was able to see them all, and you see how I was able to drive that because I had good feedback on what it was doing. But the 1,000 was a little bit blind, but still able to keep them all on there nevertheless. So I think we'll jump into reviewing the data here. As I mentioned, the 350 and the 505 airmailed the first one, so we only have 4 impacts on those targets. So we'll review the data here. So the first one, 350 yards, that was a 12 by 16 inch plate. I'm putting the plate sizes on here so that way you can see, you see on the bottom of the notes here what I had for wind forgiveness. So basically the reason I'm putting the target size is so you know that with this low performance system, you can see like, okay, how much forgiveness do I have before I start blowing them off the target? And the way I figured that out was I said, okay, if we have a 12 by 16 target and the group held 2 inches of vertical, that means that the group is 2 inches circular, not just vertically, but it's, let's say, a theoretical 2-inch group. I said, okay, if I have a 12-inch target, I have 12 inches minus the 2-inch group. That means I have 5 inches either way left that I could have, missed the wind call and been off the target, which is how I figured out, I was able to reverse engineer that I only had about 4 miles an hour hitting that first target, not 11, which is a very significant difference. And that was enough to miss even at 350. So that's how I figured that out. And what you're going to see is as we go through here, because of the low performance of this cartridge and bullet, the farther we go, the more preposterous this gets to stay on target. And you'll see that. It's painfully obvious. So, all right. So first target, 350 yards, 12 by 16 inch plate. Average velocity was slow because the gun was cold. I allowed it to acclimate. It was ice cold when I started shooting. By the time I got all the cameras set up and this and that and the other thing. So the first group, the extreme spread was very high, which I have noticed, where if you go out and the gun's really cold, you're not going to get your normal average velocity. You're not going to get that on the first few shots. So that's why it's important to go out, especially if you're a hunter, go out and shoot in the conditions that you're going to be hunting in, not just do all your load development in the summer and then hope for the best. You need to have data with that load under cold conditions. So based on that extreme spread, our verticals should have been 1.1 inches plus the dispersion. Our total vertical was 2 inches for the 4 shots that were on the plate. The one that airmailed off the side, it appeared to be right in there with these lower 3, based on my perception and seeing where it went. But that's, speculative. So I did include that velocity on here. 1 minute of angle at 350 yards is 3.67 inches. So our vertical and minute of angle was 0.546 MOA. Still really good, despite the fact that I think this top shot might have been a little bit of a flyer. I think that was the first one that hit the plate. So I think I missed with 27.10. And then we see our velocity jumped up to 27.25. And that was the highest one. And I think the third one was 2700 and it was down here. And then the fourth one was 2725 and it was lower. So we're going to see a lot of that again in this video, that the fastest shots aren't always the highest, slowest shots aren't always the lowest, or if they are, the remaining shots in the middle, there isn't a logical, the faster ones are always higher, the slowest ones are always lower. And then the final shot, 2750, which was by far the fastest by 25 feet per second, was right in the center. Which is what makes me think this top one at 2725 was a flyer. But because we're so close, 350 yards, you think, well, maybe that's just part of the group. I don't believe so, given the fact that the remaining 3 shots were from, say, 1.25 inches here down to, I think this is the lowest one, 2 1/16. So that's only 13/16 of vertical for 50 feet a second extreme spread. We just said 50 feet a second should be 1.1 inches, but it wasn't. It was only 13/16. That's what makes me think, again, that this top one was a flyer. So because we have a big 12-inch wide target at 350 yards that allows plus or minus 6 miles an hour of wind forgiveness, I blew the first shot by 7 miles an hour, so it went off the left. Next target, 505 yards. This is, again, a rectangle like the first one, but it's taller than it is wide. So this is 18 inches wide by 24 inches tall. I wish some target manufacturer out there would make targets for us long-range guys, or more targets for us long-range guys, and make them wider than they are tall, but it's like pulling teeth to get those guys to do that stuff. So average velocity on this one, 27.31. What was our last one? 27.22. So see, we're coming up. We're building a little bit of heat in the gun. 27.31. Extreme spread was 41. It was only 30 if we exclude this flyer. Should be 2.2 inches of vertical plus dispersion. Our total was 4.75 inches of vertical, including the flyer. Our one that airmailed off the side, I think it was about here, 27.20, which would be more like 2 inches of vertical. But again, speculative. We can't say that for sure because we didn't capture it. 1 MOA at 505 yards is 5.29 inches. So the shots that did land on the plate were 0.898 MOA of vertical, including that flyer. Not very good. Still sub MOA, but the flyer really ruined it. Now at only 505 yards, 6 inch wider plate than the previous distance, and our wind forgiveness plummeted down to 3.5 miles an hour. So I can be wrong 3.5 either way and still hit the plate. Overall, these shot very well. The one that dropped out the bottom, I did go home and check water capacity on all 5 of these cases, and I could not find any meaningful disparity. The total variance was 0.18 grains of capacity. So the lowest one was 55.32 grains of water capacity. The next closest one was 55.36. Now that's not enough to have any meaningful difference. So the 2 lowest capacities should be the fastest, and then the biggest capacities, which would cause the shot to drop out the bottom because there's more space in the case, so the pressure would be lower, velocity would be lower. Where 55.5 was the biggest one, and 55.46 was the next biggest one. So 0.04 grains. That's not enough to make this one go down here and these come up here. So there's something else, something weird about the brass. It's not the case capacity. I can't tell you what it is. I don't know if it's whatever. The neck thickness, the hardness, the something. The flash hole issue, like I don't know. I don't know what caused it, but again, I beat this to death at this point. With low quality brass, this is the kind of stuff you're going to see. You need to be willing to accept it or buy good brass. And you'll be able to minimize that, in my experience. All right, so on to the next one. After that, after 505, we turned, went to 640. So our wind direction was coming from a completely different direction. It was kind of like a fishtailing tailwind. Much more difficult conditions, as you guys saw, where I had no problem staying on the barn door on the 22 by 30, but then trying to play with that 10-inch plate just wasn't going to happen. Not with a fishtailing tailwind. It's one thing if it's a headwind and you can see it coming, you can see it changing, but when it's a tailwind, you're facing this way, so you have no idea what's coming back here. By the time you see it on the flag, it's way too late. So that's the most difficult condition to shoot in. But despite that, had no problem staying on the barn door. Just couldn't get it done on the little 10-inch that day. Had it been more of a crosswind, I think we would have got on there, despite the performance of the system. So 640 yards, 22 by 30 barn door, average velocity 27.45. So see, now we're coming up to where we should be. It took this number of shots to get up there. For the first 5 shots, the average was 27.45. That's all I included. So we have some you see we have some crossed out here that were after the first 5. Extreme spread of the first 5 was only 16, which should be 1.5 inches of vertical plus dispersion. Total vertical was 3.56 inches. So this is tracking bigger than what the ES should dictate. When it's what the ES should dictate plus dispersion, this is probably about what this should shoot, and anything smaller than that is kind of defying the extreme spread, like when we took it out and tested it at 640 the first time. So total vertical 3.56 inches, 1 MOA at 640 yards, as I've said many times, is 6.7 inches. Vertical in MOA 0.531. Still very good. Half MOA vertical. All things considered, that's really good. And then we see our wind forgiveness on that little 10-inch plate was only plus or minus 1.5 miles an hour. So you see this is just plummeting. So we started with 6, big stupid square, right? Then we're down to 3.5. Then we're down to 1.5. You guys want to learn, this is what you should do. You want to get good, this is what you should do. Is get to where you have something big enough you can catch your mistakes at the closer distances, but then as it goes farther, it should get harder if you really want to improve. So we see plus or minus 1.5 miles an hour, not forgiving at all. Considering the conditions that it was varying from 8 to 13, it's pretty tough to stay on that, especially like I already said with a fishtailing tailwind. So then after that, now we get really difficult. Like I said, it just keeps getting harder until this 750, and then I think it's pretty steady after that. So 750 yards, oh, it's about the same. 750, 16 by 16, so we're much farther than 505, but we have a narrower target. So we're 245 yards farther and 2 inches narrower, which is, again, what you should be doing. Average velocity, 2746. So right up in there with this last one, 2745. You're going to see that stays really consistent the rest of the way out. Now that there's some heat in the gun and I'm shooting it at a steady enough cadence to keep it happy and where, you know, it's steady, it's not cooling off, it's not heating up. I'm allowing just enough time to let it cool. So for the 4 shots we captured, as we saw, because of the lack of wind forgiveness, the wind was building as I was shooting, pushed me off on the 3rd shot, which was 2755. That was the fastest, and it didn't appear to be any higher than the rest of them. And then, so 1, 2, 4, and 5 I was able to keep on the plate. Total vertical for the 4 shots that were on the plate, 3.06 inches. See, it's like 3 1/16. Pretty clean, both directions. 1 MOA at 750 yards is 7.85 inches, so our vertical in MOA for this group was 0.390 for 4 shots. Very good. Wind forgiveness, again, only plus or minus 1.5 miles an hour. So, tough sledding. And I think I said in the video that we were approaching transonic at this target. We weren't. Transonic it's within, I think, a couple hundred feet per second of going subsonic. So we were not there yet on this target or the KYL, but when we get out to the 880, we were. Then we were transonic at that point and borderline subsonic at the 1,000-yard target. And then I don't have any pictures for the KYL. You guys saw what happened there. 2 pinwheels and 3 misses. So overall went really good considering the conditions and not really having much of a backstop or splash. That was the best we could do that day. You see the gun was capable of driving tacks. It's just, is the wind going to let us get on there? Am I going to be on it enough to, you know, break the trigger at exactly the right time? It's just very difficult conditions. So we'll go right out to 880. You guys saw how that went. So this is another 18 by 24, like what was at 550. But by the time you get it out to 880, which is exactly half a mile, you see our wind forgiveness is only plus or minus 1 mile an hour. Tough sledding. Our average again, 2744, very consistent the last 3 targets. We had 45, 46, and 44. very consistent. ES is 28. I think that part of that contributing factor is the low quality brass. I think because I loaded everything flawlessly to the kernel, consistent neck tension, consistent seating depth, extreme spread should be lower, but the brass isn't always going to allow that. I think this, oh no, I didn't measure that brass. I was going to say I thought this brass had higher disparity, but that's a different target. So the extreme spread of 28 should be 6.5 inches of vertical plus the dispersion. We only had 4.38. You see from here to here. 4 3/8, we'll call that. That's probably, it's almost 5/16, but I called it 3/8. I'm comfortable with that. It's still sub half MOA of vertical. 1 MOA at half a mile is 9.21 inches, and we're only 4.38, so our vertical is 0.476 MOA. Outstanding. And we see here that from the velocities, I don't know if I talked about that on the previous target. No, not really, so we'll talk about that briefly. 2748 was the highest shot. You could argue that's a flyer. That was the first shot that hit the plate. And then the remainders all kind of in the same area, despite the fact that there's 14 feet per second of velocity disparity. And the second fastest shot was tied for the lowest impact. And I did not change where I was aiming vertically, only horizontally to try to dance with the wind and stay on that plate. So velocities at 880, we see that the fastest shot is the highest, barely. It's almost the same as 2745, but then 2748 is about an inch or more, inch and a half lower than 2745. And 2750, 2 feet a second faster, is a full inch lower than that. And then 2725 was the lowest shot. Despite 25 feet per second lower, should be almost 6.5 inches of vertical, yet it wasn't. So see, that's just, again, beating that to death. It's not as linear and as simple as we want it to be. You got to go shoot this stuff and see what you get. Again, 0.476 MOA of vertical, outstanding, and was able to keep them all on the plate despite our wind forgiveness of only plus or minus 1 mile per hour. So this is that same target, just showing the whole target and showing a visual of what I'm talking about. So the average wind was 11 miles per hour. If I guess 10, I'm all the way out here. And if I guess 12, I'm all the way out here. Or I should say if it dies off or gusts more than that, we're off the plate. So plus or minus 1 miles per hour. If you want to be competitive at all in long range shooting, that's where you need to be. You need to be able to do this and stay within that plus or minus 1 mile an hour, or you're going to get run over. So very difficult conditions given the cartridge performance, target size, and all that. So shot amazing. And the fifth shot was a pinwheel. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Pinwheel after pinwheel under these shitty conditions, just this thing is unreal. And I feel like I performed very well that day. All right, here's our 1,000-yard target. This one is going to be a little bit controversial, but that's par for the course for us. We can see here, based on, we did capture all 10 shots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, this edge hit, and 10. The one that escaped the plate. See, here is our edge hit right here. All 10 are on there. And if you know that, you can go back and you'll be able to see it on the camera footage. It was tough to see in the scope, but on the camera footage you can see it. So one thing I want to mention is that as we look at this, we see that these shots over here are all encompassed vertically within this shot and this shot. So other than our flyer, obvious flyer, here's our highest shot, here's our lowest shot, and the remainders are in between there. So again, here's our highest shot. Here's our lowest shot, 5 1/4. You could argue that I'm a little bit high here. And if I came down a 1/16, we'd be 5 3/16. Might be 5 3/16 already, which would put our vertical sub half MOA, but I'll go the other way and say that it was 5 1/4. 1,000-yard target, 24 by 24 was our main plate here, plus our thin backer plate, just to make sure we didn't lose any shots, so I could get a good vertical measurement. So 24 by 24 for the main plate. Average velocity 27.43. Look at how consistent. Last one was 27.44, 27.43. And that's for these 9 shots. That's excluding the flyer. Extreme spread 27. So it should be 9.5 inches of vertical plus a dispersion. Yet it was only 5 1/4. 1 MOA at 1,000 yards is 10.47 inches. So that works out to our group vertical and minute of angle was 0.501. And had I said it was 5 3/16, it would have been 0.498. So no matter how you slice it, half MOA vertical, considering the low quality brass, the dumpy long range projectile, the wind chill, the conditions, the cold, the this, the that, frozen ground that I'm having to try to navigate shooting off our thoroughfare tripod in my rear base, and all things considered, I don't care who you are, under those conditions, if you can hold half MOA vertical for even more than 3 shots, that's incredible. Period. Wind forgiveness, again, plus or minus 1 mile an hour. We're a bit bigger than the half a mile target at 880, which was only 18. We can gain 6 inches and only shooting 120 yards farther for the same wind forgiveness. There's a little more zoomed in picture of the vertical. And the shot that was almost a pinwheel, that was the 6th shot. So this one was the 1st. So that close. And you guys saw this in the trailer through the whole series where I showed the wind flag, and then that 1,000-yard shot that was almost a pinwheel, that was this shot right here. And that was obviously recorded during this performance and the flag video where you see the flag just honking, I recorded that when I was going down to measure these groups. So those were the conditions I was shooting in, just lousy. But despite the conditions, I was still within, what is that, 2 1/4, 2.5 inches of the bullseye. Really good. And then what else do I have here? So we have our velocities. So we'll look at this. And there's, again, more indicators to me that this was a flyer and that our load on average will defy the extreme spread and shoot smaller vertical than the ES would dictate on average at different distances, especially as we got farther. You see it, our vertical got even better and better the farther we went from an MOA standpoint. So our average velocity, we went through that already. We went through all this already. So velocity, what do we have here? 27.57 was the highest one, which means that should be the lowest capacity piece of brass, right? Well, I measured all the brass. I checked all the water capacity when I got home. So this one should stand out from these others, despite the fact that we have 27.51 here, which is dead level with our aim point. So explain that to me. It's only 6 feet a second different, and it's dead center in the middle here. Even though 27 feet per second below that is only, what, 2 inches lower than this 27.51? So 27 feet per second is worth 2 inches, and 6 feet per second is worth, like, what is that, 5 or 6 inches? I don't think so. So 27.57 should have way less capacity. I measured all these, and way more capacity, no, way less capacity. So the 2 lowest capacities were 55.10 and 55.14. So based on the two lowest capacities, we should have two shots that are abnormal and identical, and we don't. And then the next one after that was all the way up at 55.36. So that might be significantly enough to change it, but there's two that had really low capacity, so there should be two shots up here together, and yet there isn't. So I can't tell you what caused that flyer. It's not case capacity. When I play around in Gordon's, based on the case capacity difference, that was only worth an ES of 12. Like if I put the lowest capacity in Gordon's and the highest capacity in Gordon's, according to that difference was only 12 feet per second. And including this flyer, ES was what, 33 or 34? 33, including this flyer, not 12. So I can't explain it to you. I don't know why this went up here. It's low quality brass. I don't know what else to say. Every shot I broke on here felt perfect. Nothing felt out of place. I made sure to take enough time to make good shots. And you can see my performance is consistent vertically. You know, I'm battling with the wind, and like I mentioned, some of the shots I couldn't see where they hit, so then the subsequent shot I was shooting blind. And then when I did see it, I'd correct and try to stay on top of it. But my performance is consistent. This, I don't know what this is. You want to get rid of it or try to minimize it? Use good brass. And then finally we have our wind forgiveness, plus or minus 1 mile an hour. That's based on this 24-inch plate. So we see here that I had one that escaped that. If I was a little better centered up, I think our total group here was 21 inches. So if I was a little better centered up, I would have been able to stay within that plus or minus. Basically what I'm getting at is I did stay within that plus or minus 1 mile an hour. It's just my group wasn't perfectly centered up on the plate. But being that I stayed in 21 inches and the target is 24, I was able to stay within that plus or minus 1 mile an hour, despite the fact that some of my shots were blind. And then if you think, okay, this is really low performance. If we had a high performance cartridge, what would that be? And I didn't make a slide, but like if you have a high performance F-class rifle, which is not only 22 pounds, not 13 like this one, and you know, no matches are held in 3-degree wind chill, and on and on and on. I'm pounding that home because these were horrible conditions to have this good a performance. If you had a high performance F-class gun in the conditions that you would be shooting an F-class match, you know, let's say it was these same wind conditions, our wind forgiveness on this 2-foot square, this would have been all the way down at 9 miles an hour, and this would have been all the way up at 13. So just to stay on this plate, you'd have 4 miles an hour of forgiveness, not 2. So that's why a lot of guys will shoot F open. It's easier. I hate to say that, but it's easier. And the guys that have done both will tell you, they know that it's easier. The guy that has perennially, what do I want to say, defied that is a guy named Keith Trapp. You want to see a rock star with a 308? Look that guy up. Sometimes he shoots 308 FTR. Sometimes his scores are better than most of the F open guys, despite the fact that they have way higher performance cartridges, because it's the same size target. So it can be done. It's just you're up against it. You know, you're up against a wall when an F-class rifle is going to have 4 miles an hour forgiveness to stay on this 2-foot square. A high-performance Magnum cartridge would be even better. It'd be down around, like, it wouldn't be 9, it'd be like 8.5 almost, 8.6, 8.7. So now you're talking like almost 5 miles an hour, 4.5 to 5 miles an hour wind forgiveness, not 2. So anyway, I think I've beat that to death enough. Really hard conditions. Gun performed really well. I performed really well, all things considered. This shot amazing, in my opinion. I'm sure most of you guys will feel the same way. So I think that's it for this. Next, like I said, we're going to do a conclusion video, and where I just try to put a bow on this, and I'm going to share with you the fella that bought the rifle, Dustin. I'll share his results with you. And basically what he did was he dabbled a little bit with the gun on his own, and then started applying my testing methodology and procedures, and was able to replicate what I did in this series, and I'll show you that step by step. He was able to get the same outcomes with different components and a different person doing it, but just applying the same fundamentals and doing the same things in the same orders. He got the same results. And he did it with multiple different powders. He did it with the first powder. It was so easy. He's like, well, I'm going to try to do it with this powder now. And he did it again. And then I think he tried a third powder and did it again. So, system works. If you don't believe it by now, God help you. But that's it for this one. Again, next will be the conclusion, and then we're going to move on to other things, other projects. We might come back and revisit this series, but we'll see. Anyways, that's it for now. Like, subscribe, share with your buddies. We'll see you on the next one.